The Cam Ward era at Miami is done. Will the John Mateer era begin? Well, Hurricane fans should hope it will.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I am highly intrigued by the idea of John Mateer going to Miami. He's not actually in the transfer portal yet, and Alex Dono of Locked On Canes is here with me to discuss what would happen if he did go in the portal. Plus, Utah has got a new quarterback. Is that going to help them get to a Big 12 championship level? And Connor Weigman, a Houston Cougar, just as we all once upon a time predicted. So, Dono, no more Cam Ward after the season. It was almost a playoff appearance. I don't look at this year as a failure for Miami. I think it's a disappointing end to what is otherwise still a successful campaign, but they need a new quarterback. And the trick here with John Mateer at Washington State is he's not in the transfer portal yet. Do you think Miami could sway him to change his mind?
I think Cam Ward could help, Spencer. You know, he and Mateer obviously have the relationship going back to Ward's Washington State days. And Cam Ward, you talked about a bitter end to a successful season. Cam Ward certainly views his time in Miami as a successful season. I mean, he's a Heisman candidate. He's going to be at the finals coming up this weekend, and he put up his biggest numbers this season at Miami, you know, despite the fact that Mario Cristobal has that reputation of holding quarterbacks behind a little bit. Ward did not feel that way about his time in Miami. In fact, he gave a lot of credit, did Cam, to his offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, for handing him the keys and really allowing Ward to implement his creativity and put his fingerprints all over that offense. So Ward was very happy here. So I'm sure if Mateer is, as a lot of people expect, he might, think about dipping his toe into the transfer portal. If he asks Cam Ward's advice, Ward will certainly sing Miami's praises. So if that opportunity were to arise, Miami's best recruiter would probably be their outgoing quarterback in that scenario.
Here's the twofold thinking I've had on this particular matter. You don't just have the Washington State connection of a Wazoo quarterback going down to Miami, a guy who, by the way, just had a spectacular season individually with the Cougars, had them in 8-1 and maybe as a playoff at-large team until they stumbled over their final three games to end the season 8-4. But he's practicing, preparing for the bowl game, and the anticipation is that he's going, or the expectation, I should say, is that he's going to play in that particular game. But here's the second side of it. Washington State's NIL resources are not very big. That has been well documented. Jake Dickert has spoken at length to the fans directly and to the Pullman community saying, hey, we got to have more. This is what's required. You want to play at this level? I expect to be there too, but this is what you need in the modern age of college football. And the last guy who was all about staying true to a Pac-12 school, who was built, not bought, that would be Miami running back Damian Martinez, who had an offer for $400,000 at Oregon State, reportedly went to Miami. I imagine he got a bit more than that. That's why this gets discussed before Mateer's ever in the portal, is if he does decide to go, I don't think there will be a go back on that particular offer, and Washington State would have to commit a significantly higher percentage of the NIL resources they do have compared to what Miami would have to do.
Well, and the other side of it is if and when John Mateer were to hit the transfer portal, there would be a ton of competition. And one school that I would see that could be very difficult for Miami to beat would be the Oklahoma Sooners, with Ben Arbuckle having gone there. That connection from Washington State to Oklahoma, Mateer is from that area. So it wouldn't necessarily be a slam dunk for Miami. It probably would get into a recruiting battle and a bit of a bidding war if that were to come into play. And then the other factor, Spencer, and I need to give this respect because I've been talking about it a lot the last couple days on Locked On Canes, is Mateer is probably a guy who checks off all the boxes and you go after. One of the reasons I think why Miami has been very measured so far when it comes to the transfer portal market at the quarterback position. There have been certain guys we thought Miami would go after. They haven't gone after. Miami never called Darian Mensah, who ended up at Duke. We thought Miami would be in the mix for him. Fernando Mendoza from Cal is now available. He's from Miami. He went to the same high school as Mario Cristobal. I haven't heard anything as of right now as to Miami showing interest. And I get it. I know I could see your facial expression.
Yeah.
But that's part of my point, Spencer, is Miami, I think they're only going to go after a transfer portal quarterback, and Mateer would probably check off these boxes if they know this guy is better than what they have in the room. Because Miami does have a guy in Emory Williams who doesn't have the experience. He's got 2 starts under his belt, just a handful of games. But this is a guy they've developed internally heading into his 3rd year. They like him. Obviously, he hasn't had the baptism by fire of a ton of experience. He did, beat Clemson last year and played pretty well against Florida State last season in 2 starts that he had. Didn't start any games this year. But I don't think Miami wants to scare away the quarterbacks they currently have in the room unless they know it's somebody they really need.
And the Mendoza question, if anyone just looks at his numbers, he had a productive season this year at Cal. I don't get the suspicion that Miami would pull the trigger on transfer. Let's push down the young guys for another year for Mendoza. But would they do it for Mateer? Yes. I want to throw a name at you, Dono. Preston Stone from SMU. This was one of the more surprising quarterback situations in the country because Stone was awesome for SMU in 2023. And Kevin Jennings takes the starting job from him after early struggles. They weren't fully committing to Preston Stone. It was weird. It's, of course, worked out for SMU, who's 11-2 and going to the college football playoff. But that's a guy who's got experience, who's got production, who, like Cam Ward, is coming from an offense where he's throwing it all over the field all the time. Do you think the coaching staff would go after Preston Stone and say, this is someone we'd rather start than a young up-and-comer?
I think, and Preston Stone doesn't move the needle a whole lot for me. Obviously, granted, he did have a really good year last year, and I remember interviewing Preston Stone at ACC Media Days with the expectation he was going to be the guy at SMU this season. But I don't think you want to risk blowing up your quarterback room for Preston Stone, unless if you bring in a guy like that with the understanding of, we're not handing you a starting job. I mean, there was an obvious reason why they handed Cam Ward the starting job, because it's Cam freaking Ward. Preston Stone is not that. If he would be willing to come in and compete, I don't know if that's what he's looking for, because a guy with starting experience is probably not hitting the transfer portal to maybe get a starting job
not
somewhere.
After this past season, I don't think so.
Not after this past season, exactly. But, I mean, he would have to be willing to compete, because I can't look you in the eyes right now and guarantee you it's a better idea to bring in Preston Stone rather than roll the dice on somebody you've been developing within your program, because there's ramifications there. And I don't know for sure if Emory Williams is good enough to lead Miami to an ACC championship game that seems to elude them every year. I can't guarantee you that. But what I can tell you is, if you go transfer portal shopping for quarterbacks every single year, understandable to do it for Cam Ward. But if you just bring in guys for the sake of bringing in guys, you're sending a message to players like Emory Williams and Judd Anderson and Luke Nickel in Miami's quarterback room that, we're just going to go portal shopping every year. So if you commit to us out of high school, you may or may not ever get an opportunity here. I don't think that sends the right message. So I don't know if it's worth it to bring in somebody unless it's the John Mateer level, is what I'm saying. I don't think it sends a good message for high school recruiting.
Yes or no, John Mateer is the only transfer that Miami would start at quarterback in 2025?
That's probably a yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Real quick before I get you out of here, Dono, America's game this week, Army-Navy on Saturday, the only college football game being played this week. Who you got?
Man, I will go. I'm going to go with Army for a number of reasons, including, shout out, may he rest in peace, my grandfather was in the Army in World War II. He never actually got deployed, which I'm very thankful for, because if he did, maybe I wouldn't be here right now. But he served in the Army during World War II. So for that reason, I always side with Army.
Gotcha. I've got the Knights as well. off an American Conference championship. They're now playing another game against an American team, but it's not a conference game. It's strange on the one hand, but Army's role. It's hard to pick against Army right now. Navy got off to that hot start. They've kind of cooled off. I'm taking Army there. 31-17. I think the Knights roll in that one. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes. Alex, appreciate it as always, my man.
You got it, man. Spencer, thank you for having me.
Utah has a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback. Does that mean they ascend to the level that Utes fans thought they were going to be at this season? We'll answer that question next. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time, which has Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on everything that you want to go see. Sports, concerts, comedy, theater, everything you want, they've got over there at Game Time. And you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. I've seen these views, and they give you an exact indication of what to expect upon arrival. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Is Utah back? I don't know, man. We're just going to find out. JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes. This wasn't a good year for Utah, JT, because Cam Rising wasn't on the field. 2 straight years that injury concerns have surrounded that particular situation, and it hasn't worked out. So they say, you know what, let's get a guy who just played a season, who stayed on the field, and who looks pretty darn good. Devon Dampier is the new Utah quarterback. Your instant reaction, because I look at it and go, you know what, that's different than what Kyle Whittingham has ever. He does not play like any other Kyle Whittingham quarterback of the past. This feels like Whittingham realizing, all right, we might need to change the offensive mindset here.
I'm so excited, Spencer. I mean, to actually have competent quarterback play in Salt Lake City is something that we haven't had in the past 2 seasons. And the fact that Dampier played all of last season gets me really excited. New Mexico had the 4th best offense in college football. That offensive coordinator is Utah's new OC, and he gets to bring his quarterback with him. Same QB coach too. So I'm incredibly fired up. I think Devon Dampier is, incredible. But don't even have to just take my word for it. How about Ben Stevens, who put this out on his X account? 58 players threw for at least 2,500 passing yards this season. 36 FBS player ran for at least 1,000 rushing yards. Only one did both. Devon Dampier, 2,768 passing yards, 1,666 rushing yards, 31 total touchdowns. And for anyone who's like, oh, but can he do it against good teams? Go watch him against I shouldn't say good teams, against like Power 4 teams, because Auburn's not a good team, but they're a Power 4 team. He put those defenders on skates and also balled out. He had 12 interceptions on the season, but he played some of his best football in their biggest game against Washington State late in the season. This guy is a gamer. The biggest threat is his legs. He is a fantastic runner of the football, and because of what a threat he is with his legs, that opens things up in the throw game. I'm really excited for this guy. With how many games Utah lost last year because of quarterback play, to be able to land a premier transfer portal quarterback like Devon Dampier, how can you not be fired up if you're a Utah fan?
Is this a guy who can get Utah to a Big 12 championship game?
I think he absolutely can, just because of how many games last year Utah lost due to that bad quarterback play I mentioned. Like you said, Utah was not a good team. They lost 7 of their final 8 games, but every single one of those games was a game in the 4th quarter. Even the Colorado game, Isaac Wilson throws an interception down the sideline. Utah's driving to make it like a 3 or 4 point game. So Utah was right there, and so often it was the offense's inability to do anything. Utah had one of the best defenses in the Big 12 right away, because we know what Morgan Scalley does on that side of the ball. And I do think that Dampier can, just because he's a competent quarterback. It's weird to say Devon Dampier is like 4 or 5 wins better for Utah, but it's more so just the difference between bad quarterback play to what I think will be good to potentially even better than that. When you look at what Dampier's done, and he was only a sophomore last year, so he's continuing to grow and get better. I really think he has the chance to be one of the best quarterbacks in this conference. And for anyone saying that's crazy, how do you feel about Sam Leavitt and Jake Retzloff at this time last year? You got to be feeling better about Dampier right now than you did those 2 guys.
I think those are great names to bring up because both were absolute ballers. In the Big 12, Cam Scatterbush should have been a Heisman finalist, gets the attention for Arizona State, understandably so. But Sam Leavitt is the best quarterback in the Big 12 that nobody talks about. He's got his team into the college football playoff because, yes, they have a great running game. Yes, their defense is really good, but he makes big-time throws. He can run as well, and Dampier is a true dual threat guy. You mentioned the passing yards, the 1,000 rushing yards. That's uncommon. I think that he was New Mexico's Jaden Daniels this past year. That's kind of what he looked like to me in the games that I saw him. That Washington State win, by the way, the Cougars were ranked at that time, and that was the first, I think, ever top 25 win for New Mexico, or the first in a very long time. Like that was a historic win, and I think that, along with several other performances, led Jason Beck and Devon Dampier, OC and quarterback, to Utah, and Bronco Mendenhall, the head coach. He's now in the state of Utah at Utah State, in a now Mountain West future Pac-12 school. But what I'm curious about, JT, is the style, because Utah's offensive style for a long time, it's pro style, single back, looks like a lot like Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. That's what they've done. It's not like they haven't had good offenses. They've just needed the right players to run that system. Cam Rising, when healthy, Tyler Huntley at quarterback. But Dampier's different than those guys. Huntley is not supremely mobile. I know he's a backup on the Ravens for a while. He doesn't run like Devon Dampier. Cam Rising is good. He doesn't have an arm like Devon Dampier.
Nor does he run.
Yeah, nor did he run. I mean, he ran selectively at times.
Well, put them in a 40 race. You want to put them in a 40 race? And
yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Is this is the best physical tools guy at quarterback Utah has had. How does that change what Kyle Whittingham wants to do on that side of the ball?
It has to change what Kyle Whittingham does on that side of the ball. You have to be willing to live with some of the turnovers that Dampier had last year. Do I think he's going to throw 12 interceptions last year? No. But do I think that number is going to go to like less than 5? Also, no. Dampier is going to make mistakes. But just like some of the best players, Josh Allen does this at times, like where he'll make a terrible play, and then it's like, oh my gosh, he completely brought us back into the game. Like Dampier has that type of ability to be like, oh, you messed it up. But oh wait, you saved us in the end because you're really talented. Some of the throws he makes, they're incredibly high level. You mentioned this is the offense that Utah will have. I mean, it's going to be more of a spread type of thing, but honestly, everything is built off of what Dampier can do with his legs. There were several plays that New Mexico ran where Dampier's in the gun and he gets the snap, and the first few steps he takes, it's not like it's play action RPO thing, but it makes it look like he's going to run, and it's actually a pass play all the way through. And because he is such a dynamic threat with his legs, the box is always going to be crowded, so that will open up opportunities in the passing game downfield. And he has a lively arm. Like you said, the talent, the physical tools, the mobility. The biggest difference, I think, too, between like him and Isaac Wilson is going to be his comfort with pressure in his face. He can keep plays alive. There could be no one open at first, but then Dampier is going to be able to keep the play alive for an extra 5-10 seconds. You're going to have guys get open downfield, and then you can rifle a strike for a first down. Dampier is just what Utah needed. His history with Jason Beck has me incredibly fired up. And Spencer, you'd even said it before, too. Like Utah was a good quarterback play away from being in the Big 12. Now
100%.
Now that they have what we think is good quarterback play, why can't they be a contender in this conference next year? I feel like it's going to be open every single year in the Big 12.
I think that's what it comes down to, and it does feel, again, like it's going to be a very open and gettable race. There'll be a lot of good teams. Arizona State will be good. I don't know what Colorado is going to look like without Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter back there, but BYU, why can't they have another successful season? Just go up and down. What's Willie Fritz going to do at Houston? We'll talk about him later in today's show. But last thing, this is not a facetious question, JT. I just need to ask it because of what has transpired the last couple of years. Brandon Rose, Isaac Wilson in the portal, Cam Rising. I don't think he's coming. What is the backup quarterback situation for Utah?
We don't have one right now. So okay, now we're going to land another one in the portal. I think it's like Dallin Engelman. We have like a 3-star recruit who's coming into, but I don't want to bank on another freshman. I don't want to see a freshman quarterback on the field. Give me some veteran type of backup, not an elite veteran. Obviously, Dampier's your starter, but some type of solid veteran backup, like what a Luke Batari was, but a better version of a Luke Batari. I'm sorry, that's a deep cut for some of the just general college football fan listens, but that's how bad it got for Utah. We got to our 4th and 5th straight quarterback, bring in some veterans, continue to grow and develop. Jason Beck has me feeling really fired up about the future of the Utah QB room. Got to get a veteran in there to back him up because, every time Utah's first quarterback option, that being Cam Rising over the last few years, got hurt, it got really dark in Salt Lake City.
You know who would be perfect? He's rumored to be a leader to go to Auburn, where I would suspect he'd be a backup. Ashton Daniels at Stanford could be a perfect backup. Experienced. He's not a starter, but he can make a couple of plays. You could win games with him. He went on the road with Stanford, beat Syracuse this year. Like, I'm not wild about the prospect of Auburn potentially investing in him as a starting quarterback. I think that would be a massive whiff from Hugh Freeze and company. But that's the sort of guy.
Wouldn't be a first for them.
No, it would not. That's the sort of guy that Utah's got to be able to find in the next 15 days, as long as the transfer portal window is open, because you get there's something in the air, and so maybe it's the elevation. I don't know. I don't know. Something's off. The quarterbacks are dropping like flies. Something's going on. Be prepared for it. Utah fans are probably begging Kyle Whittingham to think about that. JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes. JT, appreciate it as always, my man.
Thanks, Spencer.
Speaking of quarterbacks who are not available, Connor Weigman, Houston Cougar, just as you probably thought when he came out of high school, right? Does that move Houston into the upper echelon of the Big 12? We'll talk about that next. First, a reminder of this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's number one. Not number two, not 3 or 4, number one. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. It could be on something as simple as Army over Navy, which is something that I think is going to happen. But if you think it's going the other way around, put your money where your mouth is at FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL too, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, that's the place to go. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more, not less more, with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Connor Weigman, Houston Cougar quarterback, just as we all predicted when he came out of high school. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Houston Cougars, joining me to discuss. Parker, what was your initial reaction to this move?
I was excited, but I got to be honest, there's a lot of relief because it had kind of been hinted at throughout the week leading up to it. And I was kind of worried about what would happen if it didn't happen, being really honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not the school that I think a lot of people would have pegged as the destination for a former 5-star quarterback who wasn't great per se in the time he started this year, but was 4-1 with the Aggies when he started. So it wasn't a complete and total disaster, but what Weigman needs is a situation where he's allowed to be the guy, stay healthy, and have a chance to put it all together. Can Houston give him that to take that next step in the Big 12?
Well, I think there's a couple parts that are all starting to unfold now. You mentioned stay healthy. Some of that obviously is on him and his makeup, and it does seem to be a real issue of his in the past. But they also have seen in the last 24 hours, or the first 24 hours after his official signing, they've signed offensive linemen that want to come play in a system with Weigman and Nagel, the new offensive coordinator, and stuff like that. So I think that that's going to kind of build on itself all towards next season. And as far as like a chance to show off what he can do and his skills and things like that, we've seen Nagel work with Michael Pratt at Tulane. Like, I think that there's a lot of crossover there as well. So there's a chance it can all work out. And I think we're starting to see the linemen show up that could be a big part of that as well.
Was that one of the things you feel like was a big weakness for Houston this year, was the offensive line? Wasn't it? I know they got hit hard in the portal last offseason. It was really, really rough. Guys like Matthew Golden go to Texas and have great seasons. He wasn't the only wide receiver that left. But when you looked at this Houston roster, did you feel like the offensive line was maybe even a bigger need than the quarterback, or do you think Weigman is a more important guy there?
Well, and I've said before that Zion Chris, the guy who ended up being the starter for most of the season last year, can be a successful Division I starting quarterback in a different offense with different linemen and different, like, it would be a very different looking team. It just wasn't put together for him necessarily. And I don't know that they thought he was going to be the guy. I do think that while like 1 or 2 offensive linemen had decent years last year, as a unit, it was really poor. And bluntly, a lot of those guys were just backups the year before, and the year before wasn't great. Right. So that was just kind of what you knew you were walking into. And so, like I said, we've kind of put that at the forefront of our portal thoughts. I think there's a lot of intentionality in Weigman signing when he did at the front end of the window here. this weekend, as we're going into the Friday, going into the weekend, a lot of people are coming onto campus on their official visits that are in the transfer portal, and they know when they come on their visit that they're going to be blocking for an offense that at least has a former 5-star quarterback, right? Like all other things aside, they know that piece is already in the puzzle.
Connor Weigman's a big name because of the profile he had coming out of high school, the school he played at, Texas A&M. Do you feel like he is more than that for Houston, or do you think this is going to be, or do you think it could be, I should say, a situation where it's, oh, hey, remember Connor Weigman, now he's playing at Houston and there, whatever. Like, how much does he individually elevate this offense for Willie Fritz above what they had this season?
Well, it's a city and university that are used to having good quarterback play. I think this past couple years kind of been the exception. You have the Case Keenums, the Greg Wards, even Clayton Tune, who's an NFL backup right now. And for the American Athletic Conference, that was a big deal, right? As you look at it now, I think assuming he stays healthy, obviously there's like the ceiling and he's the 5-star toolkit, all those everything. I think weirdly there's an argument that this is a successful signing, commitment, et cetera, almost no matter what, because the sales pitch has always been, we need to get these 5-star kids to come back or stay in Houston and make it the cool thing to do. And if he's going to bring a gang of offensive line with him and he's going out and tweeting at guys and whatever, like that's already successful, at least in like that the theory worked. If he, can't stay healthy because he couldn't stay healthy at A&M, whatever. If it's a little bit different because he just needs a fresh start, great. But there's almost, I think, a stronger argument to say, like, we've been saying we need to be able to do this, and now we've shown that we can, right? And that's a big, big deal for the first full year under Willie Fritz.
What does the arrival of Weigman do to your expectations for Houston's offense?
Well, it'd be hard to be. I mean, you hope that they'd be better than last year before.
One would think, one would hope. Fingers crossed. Prayers up for the Cougars fans out there.
They were the worst offense in Power 4 football last year for the folks listening that probably didn't follow the Houston Cougars. I think it really does, though, put an onus on the offense to, score more than 20 points a game. They lost a lot of games last year simply because they couldn't put like a second or third touchdown in. The defense was phenomenal and all that, right? I think truthfully, you're looking at a team that's like probably already had some bowl game expectations, but now it feels like that's like almost a floor. Like if Weigman is healthy, winning 6 games in the Big 12 next year doesn't feel like a reach at all, right? Again, you mentioned he was 4-1 at A&M last year. The year before, he got off to a hot start, had 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions before he got hurt in 2023. I mean, he's a really good quarterback, and you've got a lot of defensive talent returning. So I think that all of these things put together, I think that it kind of raises your floor expectation and kind of puts it what you might have had as a ceiling, a bowl game or something like that, almost at your, kind of replaces your floor.
When you think about this first season for Willie Fritz at the helm, they surpassed my expectations. After the early loss to UNLV, I thought this could be 0-12. This could go downhill really quickly. And I give Willie Fritz a lot of credit because after they won their first game, I thought, I don't think they're going to win another one. I just can't see it. But they walk away with 4 wins with the schedule they had, Parker. That feels like a good season. I know it doesn't sound like a lot to people listening, but I think about guys who have built programs, that aren't necessarily getting as much attention, like a Deion Sanders at Colorado. Think of like a Jed Fish at Arizona or a Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. The first year, you take your lumps because it's just not easy. It's not a quick turnaround. It's not an immediate microwave sort of process. It's, hey, you got to show that you can do something in your first year. Then in your second year, you show you can take a step forward. And then that third year is when it feels like the arrival happens. Jonathan Smith, year 1, Oregon State, 2 wins. Jed Fish, year 1 at Arizona, 1 win. Those guys both had double-digit win seasons at non-traditional football powers by the time they ended up moving on elsewhere. Do you feel like this was the first step along that process that Willie Fritz was looking for?
Entirely, and you mentioned last year looking.
I was wondering who Tyler was, but yes.
But you mentioned last year and going 4-8 and all of that. But as much as people want to talk about what Deion did and bringing people in the transfer portal to Colorado and how fast that can make your rebuild, the other side of that coin is what happened to Houston when Dana Holgorsen left. A lot of his guys left. You mentioned Matthew Golden, but Sam Brown is one of Cam Ward's leading receivers at Miami. A bunch of defensive linemen got in the portal and followed their position coach out. It was really a mass exodus into the portal because of the coaching change, kind of the inverse of what happened in Colorado. And to have the exact same record with an inarguably more difficult schedule, you had to go to Norman. You faced a couple top 25 teams. You ended up knocking off Kansas State for kind of a signature win and feel-good game for Houston in the rain in the city of Houston. It really, I think, was a little ahead of schedule for the rational folks. Now, there are always going to be Houston fans, like there are any college football fan base, like, didn't go bowling, ultimate failure. Didn't get 8 or 9. Oh, my God, we're awful. Like those, and that was never going to happen in the first year. I think that, truthfully, like, if you'd have snuck out 1 or 2 more touchdowns here or there, maybe, but this offense wasn't ever going to be built for that.
Yeah, I feel like going into next year, the expectation for success, based on what you said, is you got to make a bowl game now. Like, as long as Weigman's healthy. If Weigman gets hurt, okay, that throws you into a tough situation. But if Weigman's there, it feels like 6, 7, maybe 8 wins could be in the cards.
And if he were to get hurt again, first of all, I mean, what a horrible story for the kid, right? I mean, he just can't stay healthy any season.
Time and again.
Because he's a 5-star kid, right? Like, he's got the tools. But the trick is really, if he stays healthy, you look at last year's team, and again, they're a bowl team if they score 3 touchdowns a game. They would have been, right? First of all, they lost to Oklahoma.
Call Houston the Iowa of the Big 12.
They really kind of were, actually. But the same Oklahoma team that knocked off Alabama by a bajillion points, Houston was down by 2 with 3 minutes left in that game. Iowa State, who played in the Big 12 championship game, it was 3-0 at the end of the third. They just couldn't score. And now they get a former 5-star quarterback, I've been told to say. I think that's a good sign. I think that helps.
You heard it here first, folks, from Parker Ainsworth lips to your ears. Houston wants Bama. Locked On Cougars on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Parker, appreciate the time.
It'd be better than it was in basketball, I guess.
Yeah. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.